8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Welcome to the Already Not Yet.
I won't need technologies, no weapons made by the dead. I'll use the sword of my voice to bring you to an end. Flatline love with Jollibee lies, eat all flesh while you planned our disguise. A West County lifestyle that blows with a smile. Now you have your idol save you from the fire. Rated to black coat, you dump all your trash. Whitewash it over with blood money cash. Threw us into your Bible pit. Tried to buy us with your Judas kit. Wake up. They promise you comfort and deliver you up in shame. The snake oil season lovers are shepherding you to your funeral wakes. Traded up a lost and real for the fake. Walls will fall when your market is raped. The Antichrist for which you search is in your mirrors and in your church. Created enemies to load up your blame. Those who stay asleep will never wake. A flood of water won't put out these flames. No mortal ship will escape this burning lake. They promise you comfort and deliver you up in shame. The snake oil season lovers are shepherding you to your funeral wakes. Real war and terrors inside your head, or maybe from your shrinking paycheck. Ever wonder if things could change, or are you comfortable in your chains? Did you believe them when they promised so much? So what happened to your dreams to accept the rush? Now the great experiment went wrong in government labs. Well, Uncle Sam set up a kingdom fueled by the latest fads. Now you can remember the dreams you once had. You've been conditioned with shopping bags to serve a machine manufactured quicksand. They promise you comfort and deliver you up in shame. The snake oil season lovers are shepherding you to your funeral wakes. They promise you comfort and deliver you up
You are listening to As It Is for People, So Too It Is for Nations podcast.
Have you ever wondered why it is that when Jesus spoke about the Son of Man, that he always spoke about the Son of Man in third person? Let me give you an example. Do not be caught asleep when the Son of Man comes, lest you go naked and ashamed. I guess because they were caught in their iniquities. See what I mean? It's interesting how it's rendered that way. People don't normally speak in third person. You know, sometimes we do, right? You know, usually for an emphasis on something, right? To get somebody's attention. But that's a pretty heavy statement. Do not be caught asleep when the Son of Man comes, lest you go naked and ashamed. Oh my. You know, I've always wondered what that meant. Years ago, I like to study etymology, where words come from and what words mean, names mean. There's always a story behind the story. There's always depth, things hidden in text that people don't realize is there. I guess what clued me in on it is throughout my life I've had this weird pattern. I don't think I'm alone in that. This town where I was born, it's actually about 40 miles away. It's called Sandersville. I was born on at the Washington County Hospital in Sandersville, Georgia. Christmas Day, 1969, at 3:14 in the afternoon. We have a joke, my mom and dad and I, because for years they tried to have kids and were unsuccessful. My dad and mom sat down. My dad said, you know, we've tried everything, but what we should have done first, he's like, we should ask the good Lord to give us a child. And my mom's like, yeah, absolutely. And so they prayed and asked God for a child. And my mom got pregnant at Passover, Easter. And I was born on Christmas Day in 1969, 9 months later, 3:14 in the afternoon at Washington County Hospital in Sandersville, Georgia, little bitty town. And it's interesting because you know what the name Sandersville means? It means Son of Man Town. Now, the joke between my parents and I is Ever since I was born on that Christmas day in 1969, they must have been wondering whether God made good on the deal or the devil did. And some days, personally, I'm not real sure. My dad's dad, my grandfather, he was a Navy CB. He was an engineer. And he was involved in the taking of Guam. They invaded Guam. And he hit the beaches with the first wave because his guys were scared. And of course, they had to send in the CBs with the first wave to hit the beaches there to clear all the obstacles and mines and everything else and get things ready to bring in equipment. So my grandfather jumped in a landing craft and hit the beaches with them. And once they secured the island, he helped lead the teams that would build the airstrips there so that the fighters and bombers could come in and start operations. And that base they built there would become Anderson Air Force Base. It's interesting. Anderson means son of man. When I was a little kid, just getting into school, my parents always took me to see my pediatric doctor, right? In Anderson, South Carolina. I could go on and on and on with this constant theme ever since I was born of that son of man theme. So I guess it was kind of built into me to ask questions about it and wonder what it meant. When Jesus said, "Do not be caught asleep when the Son of Man comes, lest you be caught naked and ashamed." It is a interesting line of thought to consider. I remember when it caught me that there was something about it being spoken in third person. And ever since then, I've kind of pondered it and looked at that from a different point of view. I'm being quiet because we have another truck. It's quiet out here until I try to record something. It struck me one day that scripture has a definitive connection to something very, very specific in the book of Revelation. And that is the seventh letter to the seventh church. And they do not realize in that letter, right, how blind, poor, and naked they are. But they're wealthy. They have need of nothing. And I think that he says that early on in it, he says, "How I wished you were hot or cold, but you were lukewarm, so I will spit you out of my mouth." It's another one of those, oh my goodness, kind of scriptures, right? What does that mean? Well, I think those two are connected. And I think those two are connected to something else. The fate of Mystery Babylon. As Mystery Babylon is stripped naked, her flesh is burned with fire, and she's devoured. A pretty brutal outcome, wouldn't you say? Now, when you think about it, it's easier to make the leap in some ways from the letter of the Church of Laodicea to Mystery Babylon in some ways because of wealth. And being lukewarm is room temperature. And if you're at room temperature, whatever the temperature of the room is, so too are you. And that's dead. That's spiritually dead, and that's, you put a dead body out in the hot sun, it's going to get hot. It's going to break down faster too. It's going to rot faster. Put it in a cold room, it'll last a little longer, but it'll be room temperature either way you go. It's a very curious thing when you start looking at how these pieces fit together and what it means and what it's saying. Another thing that's interesting about that seventh letter of the seventh church is that unlike the previous letter, the letter of the Church of Philadelphia, where there's a door open that no one can shut, that's been provided for the remnant in the Church the Church of Philadelphia. It mentions David, the key of David, right? What he opens, no one can close. What he closes, no one can open. But see, I've set before you a door that no man can close. Right? That one. Well, the interesting thing about the seventh letter of the seventh church in terms of Laodicea is that Laodicea has a door in it too. That's a famous scripture. Behold, I stand at the door and knock. If any man let me in, my Father and I will dine with him. Seems that the Church of Laodicea has locked the door from the inside. They really don't want the Lord in, and they don't want to let go of their appearances of being alive, and they don't want to let go of their pride, their fear, their avarice, and their hubris, but they love their whitewash, and they love the world and the things of the world more than they love God. It's interesting that that's the only one of those seven letters where it doesn't really talk about a remnant. Except he who overcomes, and there's a promise to he who overcomes. He who overcomes, just as my Father gave me his throne, so too will I give you mine. And you will break the nations to pieces like pottery, with an iron rod. Now that language is also in Psalm 2. It's also in Revelation 12, the man-child that's born. It's a pattern with it. It's interesting. And, you know, when you think of the rod and the staff, right? It's in the Lord's Prayer, you know, thy rod and thy staff guideth me, leadeth me. The rod is a symbol for the law and for discipline, right? Spare the rod, spoil the child. Raise them up in the way to go. When they're young and when they're old, they will not depart from it. You got to put in foundations. Proper foundations make for a proper edifice for one's life to be built upon. Otherwise, you're just going to keep building on the sandy shore of the sea. And, well, the sea of peoples, tribes, tongues, and nations, they get pretty stormy, especially when you're sowing the wind and reaping a whirlwind. You don't want to be in the middle of a whirlwind in the middle of the ocean. Hurricanes, typhoons will do a lot of damage. Many a soul have been lost to the abyss of the ocean due to storms throughout the ages. Interesting that the word typhoon has a root typhon, which is connected to the word behemoth or beast. It also is directly connected to Tiamat, the goddess of chaos, the dragon of the sea, Lotan. You know, there's a whole bunch of them, right? They're all the names of the Nakash, right? The serpent of old, the red dragon, the ancient serpent, the glistening, shining one, the most cunning of all the beasts of the field. The field being the world, and the sea being the sea of peoples, tribes, tongues, and nations, right? You know, when a nation gets stirred up, is divided. When you sow the wind, you reap chaos, a whirlwind of chaos and destruction. You can see that clearly throughout all of human history. There are clear ties to all these things, and I bring them up just because I think it's interesting, and I think maybe it'd be interesting to some of you in terms of how these things are used, in terms of how words are used, and how words have multiple meanings, multiple layers, and the complexities of certain things. The thing that's amazing to me about the Old Testament and the New Testament, the Bible in general, is how it's encrypted, it's encoded. And you can study all the stuff to see patterns if you're willing to see them, but you can't understand any of them if you don't have the spirit of truth in you to eliminate it. It's just a book otherwise. There's a difference between the Word of God in terms of written form and the living Word, which is the Spirit of truth, the Holy Spirit. Now, if you don't have the Holy Spirit, the Spirit of truth in you, you don't have the light in you. Now, if you have the Spirit of truth in you and you quench it, means, you know, you deny it, you ignore it, right? Well, it's not going to do you much good because you're still going to be walking in your flesh, the mortal coils, and that's darkness. You may be saved in the long run in terms of, your soul, but you're surely going to pay a cost in terms of what you'll have on the other side and what God could have done with you that you wouldn't allow him to do. He is just. He's also loving, and there's a darkness in him. That's why the darkness flees from the light of the truth. Another interesting statement by Jesus deals with the seed. The good sower, the good seed, is the seed that the Son of Man sows. Now that's interesting. That's a direct reference to the seed of the woman, right? Of course, you've got the seed of the Nakash, the serpent. So there's your good seed and bad seed paradigm, right? So the serpent seed, right? So in the garden, God tells the serpent, I'm putting enmity, hostility between you and the woman, the nation state, if you will. I'm going to put it in those terms. And the church, God's people, a holy nation, even more accurate in a lot of ways. And he tells the serpent, your offspring will strike his heel, the heel of he who is the offspring of the woman, and he, the offspring of the woman, will crush your head. Very, very interesting use of language there. Because that's basically you've got a vulnerability that's exploited by the serpent seed, the Nakash, the beast, right? The beast of beasts, if you will, of the field. And then you have the consequences for having done it and the absolute crushing of the head of the beast of beasts, the serpent, his offspring. So when Jesus talks about do not be caught asleep when the Son of Man comes, and he says the good seed, he who sows the good seed is the Son of Man, and he speaks in third person in both of them, what do you think that means? I mean, Jesus is fully and was and is and will always be the Son of God and Son of Man. But that language use may not be what you are generally thinking. You might want to read it and spend some time studying it and praying about it. Let me put it to you this way. If somebody is coming to your house and they tell you they're coming to your house, they don't generally speak in third person. If I were to walk up to you and go, hey, I'm going to be at your house, right, at 5, that makes sense. If I go, Max is going to be at your house at 5 o'clock tomorrow. That's not how we use language. So what is the Son of Man? If it's not just Jesus. Well, I think it's worthy of at least spending a little time contemplating, because maybe there's more to it, maybe there's not. But how do you know if you've never looked yourself? If you've been spoon-fed and given the bottle your entire life, and you never actually look at anything and dive in deeper, how do you know that what you know is accurate? I mean, you're not going to give a kid a drumstick at 4 months old. They're still on mother's milk. They don't even have the teeth to bite into the drumstick. They could gum it. The reason why I bring it up is I want you to think about how language is used. I want you to consider how you read things, how you perceive things, and how you verify and test things. Because we're in a day and age where you hear a lot of people talk about weaponized narratives, right? There's confusion of what's true and what's not true. And I mean, look, first off, the fear and confusion is not from God. You were not given a spirit of fear nor confusion. Okay? So there's a reason why whatever that is giving you that is doing it. It's pointing you to a bigger reality, to something larger occurring. It's a war. Now, why would that war be taking place? Why so much confusion and fear to try to divert you, to try to confuse you, and try to make you fearful of even thinking and testing and looking at anything, if it wasn't trying to enslave you and deceive you? After all, what was given to you was a spirit of truth. And the spirit of truth exposes all of that. Remember what I said? Fear is false evidence appearing real. It's the nature of deception. And what does deception use? Confusion. It sows confusion. You sow confusion in the ranks. It's a tactic of war. Right? If you have confused communications, well, it's going to be very, very difficult to get orders out to your units. It's going to be very difficult to communicate what is from what isn't in the middle of a battle. And where there is confusion, there is lies and intent to deceive. That's a war. Never be afraid to ask questions and to think and to test and to look it up. If you seek truth, God will lead you in the spirit of truth into all truth. But if you don't look and you don't ask, you won't know. And if you don't know, because you've never looked yourself, because you either were afraid to, I learned this in church when I was, 14 years old, and, it's bad to think past that. That's a lie. God did not give you free will and an ability to reason and think and then ban its use. An earnest question is an earnest question. That's not worthy of being beaten or stoned to death or given a stone to eat instead of bread or a snake instead of, roasted fish. Never be afraid to ask questions, and hard ones. If people are offended because you ask hard questions, you're around the wrong people. Don't bend the knee to their wishes. Just because they don't want to look deeper at things or ask questions doesn't mean you have to accept that as your own MO. That's their choice. Don't let them project that crap onto you. If they want to live in the chains of fear, false evidence appearing real, and confusion, and refuse to look, that's their choice. You didn't make them make that choice. Why should you bend a knee to their choice? Make your own damn choice. That's what God gave you as an ability to do. That's why you have free will. That's why you can choose yourself. Why do you think you have crossroads in your life? You have to make a choice. You have an opportunity to learn either way, unless you're at your last crossroads in your life. So the point is, don't be afraid to seek these things out and ask those kinds of questions. That may seem like childish. Well, what do you mean? He spoke in third person. I mean, all the commentaries say it means this. Well, okay. Maybe they're wrong. Maybe they're right. How do you know? Have you tested it? I mean, think about this. How do I put this? Okay, when David, the shepherd boy, came before King Saul in the battlefield, right? When Goliath's out there making fun of him and terrorizing him. And the king gives David his armor and his weapons, right? David honored him by trying them out. He just couldn't use them. He could hardly move in them. So he took it off, and what did he say? I can't use these. I've not tested them. How can you put on the full armor of the Lord and wield the sword, the sharp two-edged sword of the Word of God, if you haven't tested what it is you've been told? You can't. It's mere words to you. You You don't owe an allegiance to anybody's commentaries or anybody else that came before above Jesus and the Spirit of truth. All of us in the flesh are imperfect. That includes the apostles, the prophets, and all the church fathers, and everybody since. It's okay to test it. Read the story of Gideon. That's a great example of what I'm talking about. It's a great war story, too. You know, Gideon started out, first off, he was already in the hole. He didn't have nearly enough men from his perspective. And he was already a reluctant leader. I mean, he tried everything to get out of it. He couldn't believe that God would use him. Right? God was determined to use him. But he didn't make it easy on him because he knew what Gideon was made for. God made him. He knew what he had prepared him for. Gideon didn't believe in Gideon, and Gideon didn't believe in God. He believed enough in God to keep asking. And God didn't beat him for it. He met him where he was at and brought him along to where he needed him to be, which was leading the army. That just happened to be at the same time he was preparing him. He was paring his army down from 20,000 down to 300. To go against, I don't even remember what the number is. I think it was maybe 150, 200,000 or something. Okay, Gideon, you have 300 men, and I'm going to put you against this mammoth army. Now, if God had not brought him along, gotten him where he needed to be, there's no way Gideon could have done that. Gideon didn't believe that he was even worthy enough or capable enough to be used to lead any army. And what about those men that Gideon had? I mean, it'd be pretty tough to be 300 guys that are going, you know, we're going to take on all these guys. You know, 200,000 or whatever it was, right? Well, those aren't good odds by worldly perspectives. I mean, put that in your data in DC and try to crunch it, huh? It wasn't like they were carrying tactical nukes. Heck, all they were given was a torch and a shofar, a trumpet, if you will. Now, that's crazy. I mean, would any of you at the Pentagon, would any of you have considered such a battle plan? Would you? No, you wouldn't. That would seem preposterous. That would seem like a suicide mission. Seem crazy. Well, do you think they were any different back then? Do you think you're so different than they are? It was just as preposterous and crazy. It was as preposterous and crazy as God using a shepherd boy to go knock down Goliath when all the armies of Israel and the king were terrorized and pissing down both their leg pants, or both their legs, back in the camp. Now, God rarely does things the way the human beings think, and especially those that are in power. That's why his wisdom is greater than your wisdom and your ways. All of history is a testimony to that. So here's Gideon, and how did he get down to these 300 men, these 300 soldiers? Well, out of the ones that were left after each testing, they kept getting pared down. All right? They were chosen because they were the only 300. They were the only men out of all the others, that 300 men. They went down on one knee. They were told, the enemy, it's fine. The enemy's not across the river. The coast is clear. You can go ahead and get a drink of water. Right? They were on maneuvers. Thirsty as hell. Well, all but 300 men went down on both knees and trusted their leaders. They didn't test what their leaders were telling them. But 300 men went down on one knee, so when they went down to dip the water out and drink, they could keep an eye out to look for themselves just in case. Now, you could say that's not trusting your leaders, or you can say that's wise situational awareness. Why does that not apply to what you're taught? Whether in a seminary, at the war college, right, or anywhere else in your educational system and training. But yet, in our bureaucratic-minded society, in our foolishness and arrogance, we don't want people to, this is the training, this is the way it is, don't question it, right? This is the way we've always done it, and we've got the data to prove the good outcomes, right? Predictability. That's a vulnerability. Oh, if you knew just how easy that is to exploit. Some of you do. Many of you do. You can have the best data in the world and get your ass kicked. Ask General McChrystal. That's why he had to change the system when he was in command. It wasn't the data, it wasn't the training, it was how all the pieces fit together. It wasn't working. You gotta learn, you gotta adapt. And people don't like to do that. That ruffles feathers, right? Because this is the way we do it. And our data tells us that it's supposed to be working. Well, it's not. And maybe it would have never gotten to that point had the people that did question it not been silenced by the higher ups. So back to Gideon. Those 300 men were mavericks. That's exactly who God chose. A great example of that playing out from a leadership perspective and it being encouraged is St. Paul. Paul told people, right? He told in his letter, right? Be like the Bereans. Test it. Well, how do you test it? Well, you got to take time. You test, in prayer and study and with other brothers and sisters. You have a confirmation, an authentication process. A checks and balance system, if you will. There's a time where you have to get off the bottle or you have to get out of the way. Now's the time to either get off the bottle and grow up or get out of the way because you're a danger to yourself and your brothers and sisters. Now you can apply that any way that you want. I'll leave it up to you and God. But you know what? You have to learn to test things. You see what a society becomes when people aren't taught to do that, when they're not taught to think critically, when they're not taught it's okay to question things, and when they don't do it. They become automatons. They become zombies. They become cult members. They become slaves to tyranny. They become owned by lies and deception, and then become proxies for it. If you're going to fight a war, and you're not going to test your equipment or your other means and methods, your strategies, your tactics, well, you're a damn fool. Because you can be damn sure that your enemies are already doing it. The only person that enters into a battle like that is somebody that's prideful, brainwashed, or just plain lazy or ignorant. Now, if we say those things are foolish in the business world, in terms of national defense, why would that not be applicable to everything in your life? Do not be afraid to ask questions. That's how you learn. Don't be afraid to mess up. It's how you learn. If you don't take risk, you're a slave to fear. And fear is false evidence appearing real. And I can assure you this, that if you're a slave to your pride, your fear, and your confusion, well, you'll be caught naked and ashamed. Just like the Lord said. Now, chew on that one, because you're going to have to actually think. You're going to have to think about it. You see? I want you to think. Push through the fog. Push through the fear. Push through the lazy lies that have been puked out onto you your whole lives. Take a little risk. It's okay. God is not going to beat you with a baseball bat for asking questions. In fact, you should just keep a little booklet around, and every question you have about something, you should just write it down and ask him. In time, he'll show you. If you truly are seeking the truth, he'll show you. But you know why most people don't do that? They really don't care about the truth. Because they're in a lie. They're in fear. They're a slave. They're a prisoner. And ultimately, they'll be a casualty. Would you rather have a team of people in battle with you that don't ever question anything? They're easily deceived, you know. And in the battle space, in the battlefield, that most likely means you're going to go into a body bag. Because you're sure as hell not going to be situationally aware of your surroundings. You're not going to question what's going on. You have to have discernment to be situationally aware in any kind of circumstance, in any kind of application. Be it on the physical battlefields of this world, be it in business, be it in your own daily life, going to work, not going to work, working from your house, dealing with your family, with your friends, crossing the street. And you don't have to be OCD about it. But it is okay to question stuff. Anybody who tells you different, get the hell away from them. They're only projecting their own refusal to look themselves onto you. You're not under any obligation to bend a knee to their wishes. And what you'll find as you keep walking things out with the people that do that or try to silence you when you ask questions or you question the way things are really just trying to hide behind fig leaves. Their own insecurities, their own pride, their own arrogance, and their own avarice and hubris. And you'll find that they're naked. How ironic. What did Jesus say? Do not be caught asleep when the Son of Man comes, lest you go naked and ashamed. Maybe it's time for people to put on some coffee, get it ready, and wake up. Because you may be at a crossroads that you don't realize. Another tie to the Son of Man theme and Mystery Babylon. Something that Jesus said, you will not know the hour. Do not be caught asleep. You do not know the hour when the Son of Man will come. Now, another interesting thing on that is that Mystery Babylon falls in an hour. How about that? Couldn't possibly be connected, could it? Oh, no. Of course not. Circling back around, Church of Philadelphia, the 6th letter, when something's encrypted, you have to have a key to unlock the encryption. Do you not? Now think about that for a second. What did I say about the Bible in a way, and the book of Revelation in particular, is encrypted? You can read it, you can observe patterns, but without the Spirit of truth in you, the living Word, you're only going to get so far. Because it's the Spirit of truth, the Holy Spirit, that unlocks the written word. And not just that, everything else around you. It exposes what was previously hidden in the darkness. That's what the light of the truth does. So the key of David locks and unlocks things, does it not? Doors in the specific usage within the Church of Philadelphia letter, right? What he opens, no one can close. What he closes, no one can open. Now, there's another interesting thing in the book of Revelation. Now let's talk about the name Revelation before we get to that even. For something to be revealed that is hidden or encrypted or locked away, you have to have a key to open it. If you can't break the encryption, what is encrypted is hidden from you, meaning it's not revealed. It's not revealed to you. It's the only book, the book of Revelation, that has a blessing encoded within it to he who reads it and understands. The only way you can understand is for it to be revealed to you. Here's another scene in heaven, the throne room. No one was found worthy to open the scroll. Scroll is a book. What has to be opened? Why can't it be opened? Well, it has 7 seals on it. What is a seal? It's a lock. It's an encryption device, in a way. I want to use that language. Only he who has the authority to open it and the ability to open it can unlock it and break the seals. Just like an encryption. You have 7 layers of encryptions. Well, you got to have a cipher, or you got to have a key, or the key and the cipher are one and the same. To unlock what was sealed. once it is, that seal, that encryption is broken, then what was previously hidden from you is revealed. Starting to make sense why the book is called the Book of Revelation? Starting to see a pattern here emerging? Do you understand why it is I am trying to get you to think through these things? I'm trying to get you to unlock your thinking. To think differently. Look at it from a different perspective and not be afraid to ask questions. I'm asking you to test. Do we not do pen testing on our networks? Physical and security testing? Physical security testing on our secure installations? Do we not have to test our encryption schemes? What did I say? You were not given a spirit of fear nor confusion, but of peace, love, power, authority, right? And a sound mind. If you want to know the truth will be revealed to you, unlocked for you, if you seek the truth with all your heart. You will be given the encryption key by the Spirit of Truth, which will lead you into all truth and reveal what was previously hidden in the darkness, encrypted so that you have to seek it in truth for it to be revealed to you in truth. And you have to be led by the Spirit of Truth in the process of the entire thing. Now consider the key of David. What he opens, no one could close. And what he closes, no one can open. Consider the 7 seals on the scroll, the book, and consider the 7 letters written to the 7 churches, write it down. Consider it. Test it. Look at it. Ask questions. Don't be afraid. You do not have to be afraid of asking genuine questions. You know, when you go to a dictatorial, autocratic society, the last thing they want you to do is ask questions. Their entire society is built around not asking questions or questioning anything they do. That should tell you something. That should tell you who and what that is from, because it is not from God. It is from the Nakash. Because if the truth be told about their regimes, they would be exposed for the liars, deceivers, manipulators, thieves, murderers, and sons and daughters of Belial, Belial, the Nakash, the red dragon, the serpent, the beast of beasts, that they are. They fear the light of the truth, exposing them. That's why they keep their public in confusion and fear and always have to have an enemy and create enemies, right? To divert the public's attention. They're slaves, they're citizens. Because if critical mass ever was reached and enough people figured out that what they're living in is a mirage, a lie, and is deception, and is destroying them and devouring them, the regime that is over them and enslaving them would cease to be. That's why when they feel threatened, they coil up like a snake to strike, to accuse, to blame. They expose everything they have done, are doing, and plan to do in the blindness and darkness of their pride and their darkened hearts and minds. They are serpents. They are the serpent seed. You were not given a spirit of fear nor confusion. If you fear the truth, you're a slave to a lie. If you cannot tolerate people asking you genuine questions, you're already exposed going to face your whirlwind if you don't humble yourselves. You are at your crossroads. You should never, ever, as I tell you in war, you'd never want to be caught asleep while you're on point. If you are tasked with being the lookout, right? The watchman, the early warning beacon, looking out to see if there's a threat. You do not want to be caught asleep, now do you? You don't want to be caught asleep when your enemy is on the move and preparing to attack you. And you don't want to be caught asleep at your desk at work. You don't want to be caught asleep doing something you know you shouldn't do, but you want to do it anyway because you don't care about the truth. It's one thing to struggle with something and hate it. It's another thing to love it and think that you can hide it and get away with it. Because if you're caught asleep in a compromising situation, you'll be caught naked and ashamed. Now think on that for a little bit. What do you see happening in our society and in our system right now? Are things not being exposed? Why do you think it seems so confusing? If you do not test what you see, what you're told, your default setting and in your vulnerabilities is deception. It means that you are deceived and being deceived. And because you prefer being deceived to actually seeking the truth, well, that says a lot about which seed you've accepted and what has germinated in your heart and mind and in your flesh. And you are exposed as well. Because just like the nation state examples I gave you for autocrats, so too it is for people. They expose themselves, never seeing their dire predicament and their increasing vulnerabilities and their eventual fate. We call that sometimes a self-fulfilling prophecy. You also call it the three-self church, the church of the me, myself, and I. I prefer to call it pride. And when you're owned by your pride, you live in fear of being exposed. And the things you do to prevent that actually exposes you. That's why we say pride comes before the fall. It would seem that those that are owned by it are also sealed with the wrong seal. They're sealed with confusion and fear, false evidence appearing real, and darkness, and they have locked it from the inside of themselves. Just like the door that's locked from the inside in the 7th letter to the 7th church, the Church of Laodicea. You know, the one that's wealthy and has need of nothing, but cannot see how poor, naked, and blind she is. Well, that encryption is also symbolic of the seal on the forehead of Mystery Babylon. Happens to be it's the wrong seal. It's a seal that seals in darkness, not a seal of the truth, which is alluded to in the 6th letter to the Church of Philadelphia. You know, the one where David is the key of David. Where God has set before that remnant a door that no one can close. It would seem that somebody's been closing a lot of other doors in their faces, though. Probably Laodicea. They're pretty good at locking doors and shutting them and keeping people out. They don't even want God in. But they love their false religion. They love their appearances of religion. But they're really a lie. They don't see how poor, naked, and blind they are.
loves to banter about the need for truth and code, with so many people claiming truth, yet when it's clearly laid out, I see just how few people actually want to really hear it. If you want political correctness, please exit to the left. If you want religious moralizing, please step to the right. If you want relativism, read a book on Einstein, or moral rigidity, a puritanic code. But if you want some concrete answers to troubling questions about the world we live in and why it's the way it is, then I will not shy away from earnest conversation about it. I spend far too much of my life trying to fit into the mold this world demanded I squeeze into. I won't do it anymore.
Praise his name.